I was a federal probation officer in the Southern District of New York, where Diddy was just convicted.
Right.
He's convicted in the end of the two lowest counts. These hold a maximum of 10 years in prison. Where we're at with Diddy, though, is, and this is what the public hasn't heard, I was a federal probation officer in the Southern District of New York. This is the very same court now where Diddy was just convicted.
Right.
A couple things that are interesting is that he's been staying at the MDC, so Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. I don't know if you or your audience has heard of it, but it's one of the worst in the nation. It's so bad, it's almost like condemned. The numbers of people that are overcrowded, the lack of medical attention. There have been a number of judges that I'm sure on the record have ordered like reforms immediately to this place. And so people who are there are actually given more consideration in terms of speeding up their sentencing or even getting released earlier because the conditions are that notoriously bad. I used to go in and out of that jail all the time. I can tell you that it is bad. I didn't have very pleasant exchanges with the correctional officers there. In general, I found some of them to be disgruntled, you might say.
Right.
As government workers, I can relate, but I'm almost like, come on, we're
on the same team here.
Give me a break,
right?
You're holding me up for this, you're holding me up for that. So it kind of felt like that. But that's where he is now. He's awaiting sentencing. His sentencing is happening, I think, a couple months from now, but they might speed it up because of the conditions. I mean, his defense attorney, that's what they're going to be going for. Like, let's get this done. Now, he's been in about 10 months. Everyone's going like this. The news is talking about he's facing 10 years on 2 counts. So at trial, Diddy is tried for RICO, which is racketeering. That's huge. He's tried for 2 counts of sex trafficking, also huge, facing big numbers there. And then 2 counts of transportation of a person to engage in prostitution.
Right.
He's convicted in the end of the 2 lowest counts, which is transportation for prostitution. These hold a maximum of 10 years in prison. It doesn't mean he's getting 10 years and everyone in the news is going 10 years, and on both counts, it's 20 years.
Yeah. But that's like if your criminal history is off the chart or you've been doing it for 20 years
right.
or it's overwhelming evidence,
But the ordinary person, the average person who hasn't been in the system doesn't really know that. So what they're getting is, oh, Diddy's probably, he could do 20 years.
Right.
When the reality is, now you step back and look at the sentencing guidelines because that's really what's going to dictate. Now, the sentencing guidelines in 2006 became advisory, meaning they're not mandatory. But I can tell you in the Southern District of New York, a lot of judges still go with the sentencing guidelines.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Almost always. I mean, even now when we talk to guys all the time, they almost always go with it's a decent range typically. If it's appropriately calculated, it's a decent range.
Where we're at with Diddy, though, is, and this is what the public hasn't heard, his guidelines, so his defense attorney is arguing, or defense attorneys are arguing that he becomes, I think offense level maybe of 16, a criminal history category of 1. He doesn't have criminal history.
Right.
He has some arrests. I mean, I think he might have criminal history, but nothing on the books. So he's in the lowest category. 16 and 1, I think those are the numbers, puts him at about 21 to 31 months.
Right.
That's less than 2 years.
Right.
The prosecution is saying, oh my gosh, wait, that's wrong. So these enhancements.
It's not wrong. You overreached. You know what I'm saying? Like
well,
you didn't prove your case.
But they're saying that the calculations are wrong because the defense is obviously going to go with the lowest range. The prosecution says we're counting certain victims. Every victim, you get an enhancement for the victims. I think they're saying he was the leader. You get an enhancement. I forget. Well, gosh, it's been a long time since I've done these, but you get 2, 4, or 6 levels on if you're the leader of a crime as opposed to like a participant. So
I think it depends on how many people you're in charge of.
It
right?
does, but they're saying he was in charge of a lot of people and he was calling the shots.
So it's probably 4 levels. It's probably the higher of the, because
whatever it is, it's going to be high.
Yeah.
Essentially, with their enhancements, as they look at the
still
guidelines,
not going to come to 10 years.
No, what their enhancements are, they come out with 51 to 61 months.
Okay.
So 21 to 31, 51 to 61. At the very, very max, we're talking about 61 months, which is 5 years. He's been in almost a year with 85%, but it's not even 85% anymore. So 85% is the sentence that people serve in the federal government. If they're good, they can get out. But you have what is it? The First Chance Act, which means that's about, he'll probably, if he got the max, he'd probably get about half, which puts him at about 25 months.
Yeah. So he'd be in a halfway house and on an ankle monitor and sent home.
Soon. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would be surprised, I don't like to predict or speculate on sentencing anymore because sometimes I've been drastically wrong on that. But I don't think the judge is going to go to 61 months. He probably won't go to 21 months. I suspect it'll be somewhere in the middle. He's going home soon. Yeah, he's done. He's going home.
Yeah, he's within a year or two of being in a halfway house.
And he's at the MDC, and people get released earlier because of the conditions of the MDC.
I was shocked that he didn't get let out on bail right away.
Yeah, the reason, you mean after he was convicted?
Yes.
Yeah, so they petitioned for bail right away, but he's convicted of 2 acts of violence. Because they're acts of violence, bail can't be granted, and that's what it is.
Somebody told me that too.
Yeah, because I thought the same thing, and then I was like, wait a second, it's the acts of violence. So I think the judge's hands were essentially tied.
Yeah, and he's convicted. It's not like he's
He's
not accused. He's convicted.
Exactly. But I think the thing that people are going like this 20 years. I'm like, you're way off, and I understand why, because you don't read it in the news. It's not like sexy news. Oh, let's talk about the sentencing guidelines.
Well, as bad as my sentence was. When you looked on the paper, it all says he's facing up to 156 years or something. Like they always say that, like so-and-so was arrested for bank fraud of $2 million. He's looking at, a maximum sentence of 30. He could get up to 30 years. It's like, wait, it's $2 million. Like, I don't care if he had every enhancement there. He's not getting 30 years, but the 30 years is that's the grabber, right? That's the, oh my gosh, let me read this.
It is the grabber. That's the news. And it's also one thing that's about our system that has always been nuts to me as well, is like, oh, he's convicted of multiple crimes. He's got 200 years. You're like,
come on. Yeah.
It was one, I remember, so on our show, we did an episode of Women in Crime where we interviewed Amanda Knox.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, we have long been kind of supporters of her, believe that she was innocent and wrongfully convicted. And
she was in
Italy.
Spain. Oh,
Italy.
So close.
But, she's come back and she speaks out about her experiences, and they did awful things to her. I mean, lied to her in prison. They wanted her to spill information, so they told her she had HIV. She did not have HIV. They let her think that for, I don't remember how long it was, but some period of time. However, beyond all of that, she did say, I said, is there anything positive you could say about the differences in the system? Like, I'm just curious. You spent a couple years in prison. And she said, yeah, they don't do things like you're going to get 150 years because it's ridiculous. No one's going to serve 150 years. They give you like a real sentence, like, yes, 30 years, maybe 15 years, but they don't do that. And she did appreciate that she could wear normal clothing, which she said like made you feel
less
better.
Like a scumbag.
Yeah, better something.
Did you your podcast, is it a video podcast or is it audio?
We started off as audio, but now we do both.
Okay.
Yeah. Now
Did you interview her in person?
No,
okay.
We interviewed her via Zoom, and I think it might have even been like height of COVID time or something like, because it's been a couple of years since we interviewed her. But, she gave you that kind of look, and I always think that too. I go, yeah, why do we send someone to 200 years? It just doesn't make sense. Some of the things we do.
Yeah.
Which is not to say, by the way, I'm saying all these things that I think are bad about the system. I don't think everything is bad about our system.
Yeah.
It's just that as someone who was an insider too, and I've seen so many injustices, I look in and I go, there are so many places where we could fix the system and make things just better and just get rid of, and it just becomes frustrating.
Well, and we get this in the comments all the time. And people, something has to be done. And then you get the people, we have the worst system. It's like, well, wait a minute. We don't have the worst system.
We don't have the worst system.
There is no perfect system.
No.
Like the moment, first of all, let's assume that you could design the perfect system.
Yeah.
As if that's possible. Yeah. Let's pretend for a second. Yeah. The moment you say, and who's going to, put this into motion?
Right.
People. You no longer have a perfect system. Yeah, people will manipulate and twist, and it breaks down immediately.
A system is comprised of the people in it, so yeah, it's always going to break down. Of course, there is no perfect system. I mean, there's no perfect jury. There's no perfect.
I think some of our, many of the sentences are are outrageous because some people they'll just never commit a crime again. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like some people you arrest and like we gave him 30 years. Yeah, but believe it or not, if you gave him 5, he'd never commit a crime again. Like, and then some. But it's a hard argument to make where you say, hey, the lowest recidivism rate out there is, you know, murderers. And because once they get out, they almost never murder again.
No,
never.
No.
But then you say, okay, well then society's safe from these guys.
Right.
Yeah, I know. But then, you know, I also kind of go the other way where it's like, yeah, but you did murder somebody.
Yes.
You have to,
it's true.
You know, so sometimes it's like.
But the recidivism is high with those people who are in and out always doing a year, 2, 3, even up to 5.
Right.
Recidivism goes down drastically when people serve these long sentences. People are aging out of crime. They're rehabilitating.
Well, I think the aging out of crime is huge.
It's huge.
You know?
People do. Technically, most people will age out of crime in their late 40s.
Yeah.
So I'm aging out of crime. You know.
Yeah.
You're almost age out of crime.
I'm 50. Listen,
You've almost aged out of crime, like I said.
I would never listen, even when I got out of prison, I was still so kind of just, you know, frustrated and irritated. Like there was potential there.
Wow, that's interesting.
I was, you know,
you served over 12 years, right?
Yeah, I did almost 13.
Yeah,
I round up to 13.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just, you know, I was broke, frustrated. My probation officer was hell.
Yeah.
I had the highest level supervision. So I have no drug charges. So she's piss testing me once a month. She's randomly showing up. She's walking through my place. She's calling me. She's constantly threatening to have me violated. And I'm going like, you know, and it was everything about the situation was unreasonable with her. Mm-hmm. And I'm arguing with her, and she's blatantly lying to me. Like there were multiple times that she just blatantly, like, I didn't at the time I felt like that's not true.
Yeah.
Like and then I would later find out, like, she'd tell me she filed a motion with the judge to see if that was possible, and then it came back, and then a week later she'd go, yeah, the judge said you can't. Yeah, he's not going to allow that. And then of course now if you go look it up, she never filed.
There was no
motion.
record of it.
There's no motion. Right. And then of course when I got my new probation officer and said, hey, can I file something? And she goes, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can file. You want to write it up? So you could go ahead. I file it. Mine showed up. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, mine showed up, and I got what I asked for because she never did.
And that's unfortunate too, because if you had a good PO from the start too, with a good relationship, or you know what I mean, that might have also changed the way you felt.
Well, she also terrified the hell out of me. So I mean, Grant admitted I was also terrified. So.
Okay.
So
do you think she kept you scared straight?
Yeah, she did.
All right, well, there you go.
But you know, it's funny because when I first got out, I was more than happy to go. Listen, if my mother hadn't been sick at the time, I probably would have gone right back to prison. I wouldn't have cared. After 13 years, I don't care. You know?
Really? Yeah. Okay.
I would have been the happiest I would have been if I could have driven to my only problem would have been the transportation. If you could just let me drop myself off, I'll just drive back. Oh, I violated? Great. I'm going to go turn myself in there. You know, my biggest problem was I don't want to have to go here and wait to go through the proceedings to be driven. But yeah, she was hell.
I mean, listen, as we were talking also about Diddy before, I don't think that he's going to want to go back. I'm pretty sure that when he's released, he's going to be happy about it. But people have said, now what happens now? Is this a deterrent? Is this justice is the question? And it depends on which side you look at it. So for people who thought that, people who are on the defense side and they thought, yeah, he's a bad guy. He's clearly a domestic abuser. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's violent. I think he's participated in other crimes. But on the defense side, they'll say, but these charges were a total overreach. Like the RICO, RICO allows them to go back and take conduct from a long time ago, throw it in there. Trafficking. Although, that being said, I did see the case for trafficking for Cassie Ventura, even though he was not convicted. I thought there was good grounds for a conviction. But again, so you could look at it that way and go, yeah, he was convicted on the counts that he probably should have been convicted of. He's caught. The whole world, you know, has seen him. So you might say, yeah, that's justice. If you're in favor of the prosecution and you think like sex trafficking, people don't understand the true nature of it and how it's evolved, you'd think, no, money buys you justice. You could have all these great attorneys, which he did the very best money could buy, and that's why he's barely going to serve any time at all.
Yeah. Well, I think if he had not had those attorneys, I think he would have been convicted if he didn't have those attorneys. Like
for sure.
He was able to level the playing field, and I think you're right. He got convicted of probably what he's guilty of, He's obviously a sick individual. But being being an asshole,
Right.
you don't have to go to jail for that. Like
Right.
me right now, I don't, half the people I know would be locked up right now if being an asshole got you, that doesn't get you locked up. But
I do think that he got off on the. I do believe that Cassie Ventura was a victim of sex trafficking in the way that the law prescribes for it, and I think.
How many times have I said that? Under the law, what he did
was sex trafficking.
Like I've said that over and over again. I'm like, now, and because everybody's like, these are adults, they this, they that. I get it, and you're right. They are adults, and they do. I'm not saying it's the traditional what people are concerned about as far as trafficking, but what it is under the law. This person's in another state. I contacted that person. I paid them to fly here and come here and for sexual purposes. That's it. You meet the definition. And they got on the stand and said that's what it is.
Well, she met the definition by that, but I think she meets a higher standard, which was...
Well, so do the other people,
by fraud or force. That video of him beating her, that was allegedly during one of these freak-offs, right? So if he's beating her into staying... That's trafficking right there.
Right.
I mean, if you bought that argument, you bought the trafficking.
But I'm saying the other people contacting these people to come from out of state too. That also is trafficking, right?
It is, and you know what? That's where it fractures for me too, because I thought I didn't think I saw trafficking as strong. I didn't see as strong of a case, to be honest. I understood why they did not find him guilty of trafficking when it came to the second victim who testified and he was found not guilty of those charges. I did see it for Cassie, but other people said they didn't see it, and I understand that.
But then again, she's a witness. You know what I'm saying? So they don't want to charge her because she's helping with the case. So do we charge? Do you want to be a witness or do you want to be a defendant? Like I'll be a witness.
Right.
Okay, great. You're a witness. We won't charge you. For you to be a witness. So not that they don't.
Okay.
Not that they don't charge. So I'm saying maybe they thought, hey, there's. Well, and I'm actually thinking about when she was contacting other people and bringing them in too.
You mean when Cassie was?
When Cassie was. Mm-hmm. Like maybe they didn't charge her for that. I know you're saying, no, her being under duress and being abused. She's for trafficking.
Yeah.
I always think of trafficking as you're moving them from one area to the next area. But,
So trafficking is one of those crimes too that is very new in our understanding in the law and how people understand it. And I think the way that they were prosecuting it is extremely new. And I don't think people can identify it. Just like with the RICO counts, we think of RICO traditional organized crime, like mafia families, and that's how they were prosecuted. Yeah. So this is a different use of that.
Right.
Right? But I think even if they proved one or two of the charges, even if you could say, oh, maybe they met the standard, jurors are still people and they're going, is this really a criminal organization or was this an organization that sometimes committed crime or helped him facilitate or cover up crimes? At the heart of RICO, is this, was he running a crime empire?
No, I just think he's a weirdo. Like, I don't think that
he's a horrible guy. Yeah. And I really, really dislike him. And I think he's guilty of a lot of crimes, but I don't know if for RICO, it was kind of weak for me too.
Yeah, everything's kind of trafficking now. Like when I was growing up, trafficking was just pimping. It's just pimping.
Just pimping when you were growing up. Yeah.
It was just pimping.
But how can
old school pimping? I went and got some girls from the bus station. They just ran away from home, from the trailer park, and their stepfather, and they just need someplace to stay. I'm giving them an opportunity.
All right.
So that was but now it's because trafficking sounds a lot worse than pimping.
Trafficking. Well, I think you do a lot more time for trafficking than just pimping. Yeah. I mean, who could have seen this even? I wouldn't have seen this coming even when I was working in federal probation, and that's 20 years ago. So granted, I'm getting there too, but you couldn't see this coming. But what you can see coming is that he is going to be walking free soon. And
do you have a TikTok account?
I have a TikTok, but I have to tell you, I'm like a Luddite. I'm terrible at TikToking. They keep saying like, be breezy. I'm like, I'm not really great. I'm not breezy in the way that kids or other young people make TikToks and it's all funny. I'm like, my hair didn't look good there. Or
no, I don't mean you making them.
Oh,
I mean, do you have an account where you scroll every once in a while, or?
Well, I'm like, I have an account because I try to make them, but yeah.
Have you seen the Johnson & Johnson ones?
No.
About Diddy?
No, no.
Are you serious?
Oh gosh, yeah. No.
I watched these. I know I sent it to Colby. Hold on, so I know it's on Colby.
Well, that was like another thing. Also, someone asked me in an interview, like, what was the point of all the baby oil? And I'm
They're
like,
just trying to.
they're trying to dirty him up, but it's like, it has nothing to do with the baby oil's got nothing to do with the crime. They're just trying to make him so gross, and it works, but it's got nothing to do with the crime.
Here. I mean, there are so
It's so funny.
many. I wish
That's kind of funny.
That version of it is. See, I think that's the only one I said. Listen, I don't inundate Colby the way I do other people. Like I know Wade has at least 4 or 5 Johnson & Johnson baby oil.
I really think I could be wrong, but I really think in their closing statements, the prosecutor actually said something to the effect of, and he transported that baby oil or that lubricant across state lines. And you're like, what?
What are you
I swear, I think that was a thing. And I'm like, oh, I mean, the baby oil.
You're reaching. Like, you're so.
It's like, we get it. He's gross.
Right.
It's gross. Who likes that much baby oil? I don't get it, but, the memes are,
Oh, but they're so good.
Yeah, they are
They're
good,
so
actually.
I mean,
I should get more on TikTok then. See, I don't know how to use TikTok well enough. So.
And so then people started using the AI where they've got his face on other people. And I mean, it's so over the top, hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what a time to be alive.
What a time. My problem is I watch these TikToks and I don't know what's real or not. I'm like,
know.
I don't know if that's AI or not.
I only know because I'm like, Diddy did not get out of prison, so he could be. I know that's not him, but boy, that's good. And it's just hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those interesting times for me. I'm like, I've been in the true crime world for now, I mean, over 20 years, but I've never seen anything like the last 2 years with trials in our world.
What about social media and just what's coming out on social media? Because look, up to, I'm sorry, did I interrupt
No,
you?
go ahead.
Okay. Up to the trial,
Yeah.
leading up to the trial, the amount of social media speculation, which it's never presented as speculation. It's
Right.
100%. Oh, there are underage tapes. He's been called with the prosecutors. They're going to re-indict. They just got a hold. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
There's none of that. Like,
No, right.
like they've got, you think they wouldn't have mentioned that? They're talking about baby oil. Like they're throwing everything against the wall.
They would have said that.
Yeah.
I teach a crime and media class, so stuff is kind of crazy to me too. The media framing of this, the media reporting and the frames and the narrative and the lack of truth or.
Well, you know what I always mention is that, when people are like, oh, this and that, I'm always like, well, wait a minute, you don't really know yet. You got to wait and see. And no, but wait a minute. You have to understand, like, look at, and I always go back to when, and I'm like 10 years older than you, at least. Okay.
About.
Okay. When I forget, there was an older lady, a grandmother, drives through McDonald's. You remember this case. Drove through McDonald's, went to get her coffee.
Oh.
The lid wasn't on top because the coffee was so hot.
Yep.
The lids don't go on tight enough. Mm-hmm. And the styrofoam would get soft.
Yeah.
They hand it to her. The lid pops off, drops right into her lap, burns her, scolds her.
Yeah.
She sues McDonald's, goes to trial. They don't accept the lawsuit, right? They don't accept they don't mediate. We're not going to come up and settle. We're going to trial. They go to trial. She gets $3.5 million.
Yeah.
Might be 2.5, might be 4.
It was
I don't know.
a lot of money.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
And the news went nuts on these lawsuits are ridiculous and this and that. And it's horrible and it's this and it's that. But here's the problem. What people don't know is, there had been over 1,500 complaints about, listen, and it was like over the last 10 years, it had been like 15,000 or 20,000 complaints for McDonald's coffee was boiling hot.
Right.
People were being burned.
Right.
So they never say that on the news.
No.
They never say that this woman, not only did they always make like she got burned. Like it was nothing. Like it was a light sunburn.
Right.
No, she had to have reconstructive surgery on her vagina. How much is that worth? And it wasn't that it was to punish McDonald's for doing something that harmed people, that you knew harmed people. And by the way, that the Food and Drug Administration had come in and fined you. You're paying fines to keep your coffee this hot to burn people because in their little forms that you fill out, what do you like? Oh, I love that the coffee's always hot. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be 200.
It doesn't have to be scalding.
Yeah, it doesn't have 240 degrees.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing is that, and this is what I was trying to mention to people, you didn't hear all that. You heard what was on the news. Do you know who heard the true story? What? Who? The jury.
Yeah.
And they determined that she was burned. It was preventable. They've known about this. It's a problem. They want McDonald's to change their policy, and to do that, they had to hit them where it hurts, which is in their pocketbook.
Financially.
Right, and that's it. Like so you don't know. Just like before the trial, everybody's sure that there's all kinds of sex rings and all these things that are going to come out, but it didn't come out.
And let's point out also, the trial's over, but did you watch every bit of that trial? You'd have to really, like, if you missed witnesses, if you missed evidence, if you missed even pretrial motions, like things, if you missed all that stuff, you still don't have the whole story, but the jury does.
Right.
So when people get frustrated too with jurors, like I remember when Casey Anthony was acquitted.
I was just thinking Casey Anthony.
I remember people calling me, your damn criminal justice system acquits people like this. They're always getting away with murder. And I'm like, first of all, people don't always get away with murder. It's like, you get really
reasonable.
We get really heated about these celebrity cases that are like the 1% of 1% that we see and think like the system is based on that. But second of all, at the end of that case, I think she killed her daughter, of course. But the jury heard the prosecutor saying, we can only surmise or hope that she used the chloroform before she did certain things. It was like, we could only hope that this happened. So the jury gets back there and they're told, you have to have beyond a reasonable doubt that these things happened. They didn't know. They just didn't know. And even though we're frustrated with that. I don't think that's if you don't know, or if you're not sure, you're supposed to, according to the law, acquit. So I think that happens where we just, don't know everything. Unfortunately, these cases, though, are going to shape our perceptions of justice when these cases are so extreme, and it's not the ordinary case in our criminal justice system.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say OJ is another example of that. Like, do I think he butchered those two people? Of course he did. Of course he did. But then I also think, but the moment you have a detective who's willing to get on the stand and just blatantly start lying, and he was in charge of all of the evidence and the blood evidence, like you have to go. And this is the guy's word I'm supposed to take. Like, then it becomes, I'm sorry, he's got to walk free. It's horrible.
There was so much more going on with that case, though, too. It was about, like, there was the race dynamic and frustrations. There was, we always say that extra legal characteristics are so much more influential. Like, the jury, they didn't like Marsha Clark, but they loved Johnny Cochran. He made an impression on them. Things that shouldn't have mattered to them. But, one of the things they all said was they believed Mark Fuhrman was a dirty cop and that, they didn't trust him. So it's like, I still think that's one of the biggest injustices, but you can't be in the mind of a jury and we don't know everything. That's really
but what the jury made unfortunately, I think they made the right decision, but I also think he's guilty.
Oh,
I think that's what I'm saying.
No, you can absolutely think that. Yeah, there's a legal standard. And there's, what you think, there's factual guilt and actual guilt.
Right. I could have been on the...
actual guilt and legal guilt.
I could have been on the jury and thought, I think he did it. And I still would have said, but I'm sorry, I'm going to say not guilty. But you think he did it. Yeah, I think he probably did it. But the truth is, this guy is part of the reason that I think, you know what I'm saying? Like, this guy's lying. Yeah. He's lying about this. He's lying about that. He was in charge of the blood evidence. He was there when it was. He went from here to here. Like, is it possible? Yes. Okay, I'm not sending this guy to jail for the rest of his life because it's because of that. The moment that guy entered the picture, it was over.
The process was tainted. It happened in the Karen Reed case recently too. Karen Reed's case, like, you found out that the lead detective handling it, the lead trooper, he was making all sorts of inappropriate comments about her, sending information to friends outside the case. So it's like,
and then didn't they?
The process was tainted
before he and the other guys. Their phones were going to be subpoenaed. We immediately wipe our phones and then discard them, destroy them. I'm sorry, we're done.
Yeah.
To me, I'd be like, she goes free.
No, that case, I mean, I think acquittal was the only thing for them.
Right.
And I don't know that they had anything to do with this guy's murder. Maybe they're all doing illegal shit or cheating on their wives. I don't know. However, the optics
Yeah.
look terrible. And when we're talking about reasonable doubt, there it was,
Right.
front and center. So
I mean, it was so funny is you guys trying to ensure that she's found guilty, just ensure that she's set free.
yeah,
It would have been better that they got your phones and found out some dirt that you're doing. And she'd
Right.
probably be in
Right.
jail right now instead of what
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. It's. I mean, it could have been enforced. That could have tainted the process too. So
What is your thought process on what Diddy ends up getting? Back to Diddy.
yeah, I think he's gonna get. I think he's gonna get a couple years, and he's gonna get out
He's already
very
done
soon.
not 10 months. Yeah.
So,
So,
I mean,
do you think
I-
he's back home in a year, 18 months?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really do. Do I think that's justice? No, not exactly. But do I understand why the jury came to the conclusion? Yeah. I mean, that's just a fact. He had the lawyers that he had, and they created the doubt that they could. And I do think some of the charges maybe were just a bridge too far for them. So, yeah, the most you can hope for at this point is that he learned maybe some type of lesson. Unfortunately, with guys like him, he's got a history, and I know he's not convicted of certain crimes, but I believe there are other crimes that he's committed. I believe he's a violent guy. I believe he's used violence against men, females. I do think he's committed sexual assaults. I think you get more emboldened, the more power you have, the less control that people have over you. But getting away with it just keeps reinforcing that you can do whatever you want. So some people might say, well, he's barely going to get a sentence. So isn't he going to learn that he can get away with it again? Other people might say, well, no, I mean, he's in the MDC. It's a pretty bad place. He's going to do real time. The entire world is exposed to him. There are probably going to be other crimes at some point that he's charged with in a different way. So maybe that's the deterrent that he needs. The thing that we can just all agree on and hope for is that when he gets out, he doesn't do anything wrong. Like he just
Hopefully this scares the absolute
right.
terrifies him.
Hopefully this is the deterrent, the scare that he needed.
And he's also, how old is he?
So he's 55 or 54. So he's also at the end of, I'd say, for violent crimes. Although people who are domestic abusers, you don't always age out of that. However, we can hope that he's aged out of crime. I hope that real victims file more lawsuits. I hope he gets bogged down a little bit in the courts. I think it's what he deserves. However, this is what a jury decided, and I understand the decision, even if I don't agree with it.
Well, plus I think he's suing a bunch of people too.
I'm sure.
Ariel Mitchell and Courtney Burgess are being sued because they went on Law and Crime and talked about how Courtney had gone in front of the grand jury and been asked about tapes of children that he said he had, and so they brought him in front of the grand jury for him to testify about it. And he had to hand over his cell phone, and I think they seized they might have seized some computers.
So wait, he's suing him for what though?
So Diddy's lawyers are suing them because they went. Well, one, Courtney came on this program and said he had video of Diddy having sexual intercourse with Usher, Justin Bieber.
Okay.
Will Smith's son, which I should know his name, and I don't.
Jaden?
Jaden.
Yeah, okay.
And Jaden Smith. So
Okay.
he said he had those tapes. We had this whole conversation.
Okay.
It went on and on. We've had him on a few times. And then,
Well, if he didn't have tapes like that, and he's not producing that, then
listen to how funny this is. He says all that. They go to his house within a few days.
Yeah.
And they
Of
serve him a
course.
subpoena. And a couple days later, so then he gets this lawyer.
yeah,
A couple days later, he's in front of a grand jury.
yeah.
After they leave the grand jury, he and Ariel are on the courtroom steps. They do a little press conference with I want to say, who is it? The TMZ, like TMZ and they do that, and then they go from there. They go on to Law and Crime, and they do a little interview with them talking about what he was asked about, And then after that whole thing, he comes back on here.
Oh my gosh.
He talks about how on the grand jury, they played our interview. And he's like, oh yeah, he's like, they loved the grand jury loves our interview. So he
You're
talks.
like, oh, thanks. Did they have any feedback? No.
Nice. Did you tell him to subscribe? So he does that. And then after that interview, they come back, they subpoena him again, and they ask him to come back. Because the truth is, he's lying.
Yeah.
And by now he's changed his lies a little bit, and they want to bring him back.
They're going to catch him.
We're going to catch you now. We're going to get you to come back and now lie again, and you're done.
Yeah.
And so that the next time she comes in and she says that, by this point, I think Ariel realized, oh, you're like a pathological liar. Like you're constantly lying.
Oh.
And so at this point, she says, no, you can't go back in. I'm not letting you. So she says, no, if he goes back in, he's pleading the fifth, because she's realizing what's happening.
Yeah.
The problem is Diddy's lawyers filed suit against her and him, and they hired a lawyer who contacted me, and I talked to him on the phone several times. He's like, look, I've watched all your videos, because I did multiple videos about it. He's like, I watched all your videos. He's like, I found out more watching your videos about what was going on than I did researching the case.
Do you think they're going to subpoena you?
I don't know. It'd make great content. I hope they do.
I know, right? I was just thinking that.
It's super fun.
It would make great content. It sounds like they have a good lawsuit too.
Yeah. And well, here's what's funny about that is that we did one thing where we basically were, so here's what happened. Initially what happened was there was a book that was written called Kim's Lost Words, which was written by Kim Porter.
Yeah, Diddy's a longtime love, he said.
Baby mama that died.
Yes.
So Courtney, this is how many times he lied, initially came out and said that the day after her funeral, he was given first it was one flash drive.
Okay.
That contained a whole bunch of videos, those videos we talked about.
Okay.
And the manuscript to her memoir that was damning.
Okay.
He then gave that, it's a long, I'm going to shorten it. I'm going to shorten it up. So he then gave that, or he got screenshots of the videos and gave those to Chris Todd, a guy named Chris Todd.
Okay.
Kind of a true crime writer. And so Chris Todd then went and tried to shop the videos around. So then Jaguar Wright and a bunch of these people that are kind of like rap podcasters or influencers start talking about there's people right now trying to find a buyer for the for Diddy's sex tapes.
Oh my
This is all prior to him being arrested and indicted.
Wow.
So by doing that, it started a whole firestorm. And then Diddy, of course, is raided, indicted, arrested, grabbed, and then it really blows up. Then they put out the memoir. They then publish it on Amazon. It's up for about a month.
Okay.
Sells roughly 30,000 copies. It's on Amazon bestseller list.
Okay.
And then it's taken down because of a lawsuit and a cease and desist, because they actually use a copywritten photo of Kim Porter. So they take it down. They get it taken down. Now, but here's the problem is because of all, then he comes on and we talk about it. Courtney and I do a thing. Then he gets subpoenaed. Then he has to go in front of the grand jury. But in the meantime, when all this hits, here's the problem. He may have done, like everybody's like, yeah, they're going to get tapes. They're going to use them. It's going to be there. He's like, what he's done is great for the prosecution. But the truth is, if you know anything, what he did, if you know the whole backstory, that's why that rumor got started by basically Courtney's just lying. He wrote the whole thing. It's all fabricated. Yeah. There's no thing. He wrote it. He put it out, the whole thing. Because what he did later was he starts telling lie. And then it becomes, he got those discs or those flash drives. First then it was 2 weeks before she died. Then it was a month, then it was a couple months before she died. Then he can't keep his story straight. And so then, of course, one of the things he was saying was he had watched the videos.
Oh, gosh.
He's like, yeah, well, I had to transfer them from the flash drive to my thing. So now he's talking about transferring pornography.
I was just going to say that.
From
You
one
can't-
device to another, showing it to other people, watching. He's not the whole thing, but I watched enough to know it was Bieber. I watched enough to know that so-and-so Usher was drunk when it was happening.
I mean, he's just put himself.
You're watching shot that dog. You just admitted
You
to
just
CP.
admit possession.
Yeah. Manufacturing because
Yes.
you're shopping. You gave it to a guy to shop it. You're trying to sell it. So
Wow.
So first, I think they've had him come in and talk about it. Now, of course, who knows what he said in front of the grand jury? And then, of course, he said that they got the videos. That they got them.
Yeah.
But they didn't get them
didn't get
because they never existed.
Because it's a lie, the big lie.
Right. And
is
if they
what
got them, they would have indicted you.
I
So-
mean, yeah.
So anyway, and that's why I think they brought him back once they realized there are no discs, there are no tapes, there are no this, and you've changed your story multiple times. We're now going to get you to go back. And then Ariel, being a decent attorney, at this point, realizing what's going on, she's like, yeah, I'm not going to let you go back in front of these people. But the problem is because all that came out, Diddy's lawyers are suing them, and then her lawyer reached out to me. She hired her lawyer. He reached out. He reached out to me, and he was like, he was like, "Is it possible? Do you think it's possible that those tapes exist?" I was like, "Absolutely not. I don't believe that." Like, I felt like, and I know he would have loved for me to say, "Absolutely, yes," and then he'd be like, "Great, I can use you as a witness." And
Right.
but I don't, and I've already done multiple videos where I said it's all a lie.
Yeah.
You can't believe anything it says. Courtney says. So, but I'm saying Diddy's probably going to get out. He's probably going to sue a lot of people. He's probably going to sue several of these organizations that have come out and said, Diddy this and did that. He's suing a law and crime.
No, I'm sure he's going to.
Right.
But I think he's going to get sued as well. I think he's going to be.
Oh, yeah. Well, because now he's been found guilty of, but it's prostitution.
But there are, remember, he can be sued by other victims that could come forward. In a civil court, the standard for conviction is much less. He can be
preponderance of the evidence.
Yeah. So I think he's going to be a party to lawsuits. I mean, I think this is going to be.
You think it might ruin him? I think it's probably already ruined.
Yeah,
but will it drain him of his resources?
Well, I don't think civil suits ever drain people of their resources in the judgments, maybe the legal fees, because if you've ever heard people talk about, like, the most famous example you can give in my classes that I do is the OJ case and the Goldmans.
Yeah, they've never gotten anything, right?
So Kim Goldman, when we spoke with her, talks about, like, you think like, oh, we were awarded this money. We never saw a dime. And you have to chase that money. Mm-hmm. So she's like, even us, vigorously chasing it because we just didn't want him to have it.
Yeah.
And we still never got anything. So I think even if there's settlements against him, I don't know, that'll drain him. Legal fees might drain him. How much is he really going to be drained? How much did this defense cost him? A lot of money. I think it'll be unending. And there's going to be... like you said, you're talking about this guy who's like exploiting this situation and making everything worse and wasting people's time and resources. Because obviously, if there are videos of Diddy having sexual relations with children, you got to, the investigation, you got to follow this up. The investigation,
Yeah.
there could, this is serious.
Yeah.
And so, look what he's done. I mean, look what that's done, that misinformation.
Well, now listen, in Courtney's defense,
Yeah.
okay, we did get a lot of views on those videos. I mean,
Well,
it is.
I
So
mean,
I'm, Courtney,
yeah,
I don't believe you. You've got some issues, but we did get a lot of views.
I mean, you got a lot of views, and
Yeah.
honestly, in the podcast world, that's really important. I mean,
I don't think that was his. I don't think that it was part of his plan, but he did make a chunk of money. Those guys, they made a chunk of money.
I almost wonder if he was hoping you would make a lot of money and get a lot of views.
No, he wasn't, but he sold a lot of books.
Yeah.
He sold. I mean, listen, I don't know. 30,000 copies in a month, in roughly a month. I don't know if it was like.
I'm not good at math though.
3
What do they
weeks.
charge for the book? Like, how much money was that? 30,000 times what?
Oh, I know exactly what they made.
Oh, you do?
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. Whether you're having trouble falling asleep, you're waking up sweating in the middle of the night, or all of the above. That's where Ghost Bed can help. As the makers of the coolest beds in the world, Ghost Bed is your go-to for cooling mattresses, cooling pillows, and cooling bedding. From their signature Ghost Ice fabric to patented technology that adjusts to your body's temperature, every Ghost Bed mattress is designed with cooling in mind. So whether you want a plusher mattress that cushions your shoulders and hips, or a firm option with exceptional support, your Ghost Bed will keep you cool and comfortable all night long. When you purchase a Ghost Bed mattress, your comfort is guaranteed. You can try out your mattress for 101 nights, risk-free, to make sure it's the right fit for you. Plus, they offer free shipping and most items are shipped within 24 hours. If you're not sure which Ghost bed is right for you, check out their mattress quiz. You'll answer a few questions and get a personalized recommendation. Even better, our listeners will get 10% off for a limited time. Just visit ghostbed.com/Cox and use code Cox at the checkout. That's ghostbed.com/Cox and use code Cox for 10% off site-wide. So here's the multiple problems. One, I've done several podcasts on it.
Okay.
On this already with a few different people.
Okay.
And I've been saying he's getting 15 to 20 years. I'm
Did
clear.
he?
Yeah, I'm wrong. No, prior to being found guilty.
Oh.
Because here's what I was going on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought he'd be convicted longer too. Yeah. I thought he was going to get trafficking for sure.
And I said it because knowing the federal system where everybody's and I'm thinking, you guys don't seem to understand. They're going to say enough bad things about him in front of the jurors. The jurors will hate him and because he's sitting there, he's been indicted, he's sitting in that chair, the judge hates him, the judge says, okay, which of these counts? They've decided he's a despicable human being. They're going to find him guilty of even though he doesn't meet the criteria under the law, they don't care.
They don't like him.
They don't like him. They're going to say, okay, we got an opportunity to smash this guy. They don't know what he's going to be sentenced to.
Yeah.
They're just, is he guilty? Yeah, he's guilty of that. He's guilty. And that's what I think. Despite whether he was found, whether he actually meets the criteria of those or breaking the law, those laws or not. That's what I thought because that was that's my experience with the federal court. And I was wrong. And then so he ended up with 2 charges. Yeah. And the problem is I made a bet with James. And he immediately, now I remember making the bet, and I shouldn't say this because James will take advantage of it. I made a bet that I said he'll get more than 10 years. Oh, and so James goes, I think it's less than 10. He goes, so if he gets more than 10, he's like, you win. I go, yeah. He goes, if I get less than, I win. Yeah. I say, yeah. And I said, okay. And we had a dollar amount. And so as soon as he was found guilty and people were saying he's going to get whatever, he came back and he said, remember our bet? Yeah. Under 10. He goes, I think he gets under 10. He goes, I've already won because he can't get more than 10. He goes, so it's under 10. He goes, you lost the bet. And I went, and I said, and if I remember correctly, he said, we bet $1 million. So where is my, I'm thinking to myself, I know I didn't bet $1 million.
I sure hope you didn't.
I'm pinging, but it was either 50 or 100. And just me saying 100 right now, he's now going to come back and say, you already said it was 100.
Yeah, but if you look at it like if it's not $1 million, it's 100. That's probably a deal.
It is a deal. Yeah. I'm more than happy to pay James the 50 or 100.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said $1 million. I don't think it was $1 million. I feel very confident. I know it. I'm positive it's not $1 million.
I mean, I really hope it wasn't.
Unless I could give him $1 million of Ray's old coin that
or like Monopoly dollars or something.
Right. Like I don't know. Is that pesos? I don't remember. Did we say dollars? So, but yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna have to pay James. Okay. I feel like I stiffed him on the last. I owed him $50 last time. I feel like I paid for dinner.
Oh, well, that's not stiffing.
I'm sure he feels like it's stiffing. Okay. So because he's paid for lots of dinner. So he's like, no, I feel like you owed me dinner.
Well, then that's different.
I was like, no, I got this. I already owe you 50, so we're good. He was like, I don't feel like we're good. So, so I've definitely been wrong on this, and we'll see what he gets. But I think I think he'll get under 5. But a lot of people have said that the judge just despises him. So I don't know how much. I mean, I think that weighs a lot. But
yes, but we don't know anything. The judge is fairly new in Southern District, so we don't even have like a history. Like some of the judges that I worked with, I'd be like, oh, I know this judge. They have a history of going low or high. Right. This is an anomaly, the case in a lot of ways. He very well could wind up getting 5 years, but I don't know.
Thinking, yeah.
But think about it this way: even if he gets 5 years, he's not getting 5 years. He's getting 2.5 probably.
Yeah,
he's still gonna go home,
and he's not gonna live like a normal. Like if he's not going to live like a normal, he's going to, first of all, he'll go to a low, most likely, I think. What?
He'll go to a what?
A low security.
Oh, a low. I'm like, is this a new word for halfway house? Yeah.
No. Like a low. Like in this district, even if you come in with camp points, you go to a low first and to work your way up or down.
Yes.
So I think because it's semi-violent. Well, like you said, it's a violent crime.
It's a violent crime.
So I think he goes to a low. Yeah. And then I think he goes to a low, and he's got 5 different people in his unit that he's putting money on their books. They're buying all of his stuff for him. Yeah. they're making his bed, they're cleaning his room, they're making him dinner. He almost never is going to have to go in the chow hall.
Yeah.
And he's going to live really as best as you can live. He's going to have people looking out for him. He's going to be able to, watch movies and play on. They have those pads now. Like, he'll be able to play. I think you can get movies on the pad. Like he's gonna listen to music and stuff. All the guys that are wannabe rappers are gonna be hitting him up, and he's gonna be a god, and they're gonna think he's amazing.
This is even if he does anytime. He could walk out of MDC and go home.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, it might be the Martha Stewart where somebody comes and says, "Look at all these designs I have," and she says, "I'm going to turn you into somebody."
There you go.
That's what he's going to have. He's going to walk out of there with 10 different new rap guys.
A new label.
Yeah, the new label. It may be the best thing ever happened to him, really. So how'd you become a probation officer?
One of the things that my mom and I loved to do together was to just watch crime shows. Like, I shouldn't have been up at 10 o'clock on a school night watching LA Law or Blue Bloods or whatever it was. Not Blue Bloods, but some other ones.
So it wasn't like documentaries on Ted Bundy. It was
she liked Law and Order and
love
those
Law and
shows. Yeah, I mean, I do too. Yeah. I tell my students, don't believe it's real.
No.
But I watch it anyway.
I'm sorry. I was going to say the Jack McCoy where it's 9 o'clock at night and they find out that the guy didn't do it, and they call up the prison and they run down there and they get the guy and get him out of prison, and we have to fix this. We have to get the judge,
right? And
they get him out, and they did it. In reality, what McCoy does is go, well, they found him guilty. I mean, it's, he's got the court. It'll work itself out.
Right, exactly.
But he's innocent. Listen, he was found guilty. A jury said.
Or the fact that every case goes to trial, which is ridiculous because no cases go to trial just about, except for some of the famous ones which we know. But that's where my interest came. I really just loved the shows. I wanted to be, I remember I was watching LA Law, and there was a prosecutor, Grace Van Owen, and that's who I wanted to be when I grew up. I was like, I'm going to be Grace Van Owen. And that literally stuck with me all the way through college. So that's
what you were going for?
I was going for that. So I took an internship in college. I was studying political science. I wanted to study criminal justice, but my advisor told me, I'll never forget this. He said, criminal justice is just a passing trend. It won't be popular in a few years from now.
Yeah, I know. Just like that internet thing and crypto.
So exactly. So I wound up doing political science. I didn't love it, but I got...
You're an advisor. You look back now and you're like, why was this guy... What were his qualifications again?
Yeah, I look back and I'm like, he definitely had that wrong.
All right.
But that's okay. That's
people
fair.
are going to stop. People aren't even going to be committing crimes in a couple of years.
Yeah. That's where I went, though. And I did an internship with the public defender's office. And I remember I was just like all about, I loved it. I loved it. I liked being in the jails. I liked being in the courts. I loved the law. And so I got a job after school as a paralegal. And then I realized, oh my God, I don't want to be a lawyer. This is the worst. All these hours, briefs, litigation. I mean, it wasn't what I thought, but I loved criminal justice.
Yeah. It looks sexy on LA Law.
It looks so good on LA Law.
Suits.
Suits. I loved Suits too. Yeah. I mean, I still love these shows.
So. They read 3 paragraphs and they've got the whole case wrapped up. But it's not really.
No, it wasn't like that.
It happens.
So I was like, what am I going to do now? And I got my master's in criminal justice from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. If you live in the city, that's like the premier place. Mm-hmm. And that program I loved. That was awesome. And I had a federal probation officer as a professor. I remember he was like this older guy, and he used to just tell me, you have to go take the exam for federal probation. He called me Sacks. Sacks, you got to be a PO. That's where it's at. That's what I did. I never really thought about it. So that kind of led me to my path in law enforcement. And I applied for it. The market was great then. The market was like awesome for jobs then. So I applied for a couple jobs, and I was between 2. I was offered a job as an investigator for the district attorney's office, which in New York is a really cool, prestigious job, or this job as a federal probation officer. And I went with the federal probation job, but it was a tough call.
So what did the probation, what did that entail once you were told, hey, you've got the job? Like, do you actually go to, police go to an academy or something? Do you actually do you're going to be they put you with another PO for 6 months or something, or do they actually have like a course or
Yeah,
something?
they do an academy now, but when I was there, I came in just before. You have to do a lot of training, so it's not like you're not prepared. But it was all randomized, like a week of self defense, a week of firearms, a week of handcuff training, and then I had to learn the federal sentencing guidelines because there's two parts of probation. There's the pre-sentence part, which comes when someone's been convicted, but before they're sentenced. And then there's the supervision part. So that's your traditional probation, right? Like being supervised on parole or supervised release kind of thing.
Boy, this is going to be good. We have to talk about Zach.
Okay.
I have a buddy who is a guy I met in federal prison, in the medium federal prison in Coleman. And he was in there for fraud. I was in there for fraud.
Yeah.
And so he and I, because most of the people there are, they're I don't say gang members, whatever, they're drug dealers, gang members, whatever. And so, he and I, there's I don't know, 15 white guys on the whole compound out of 1,800.
Oh, wow.
Well, no, let's say there's 30,
Okay.
and I'd say that 27 of those guys were there for meth. And then you've got, out of fraudsters, there's maybe 5 or 6 fraudsters at that time. So
Okay.
he and I, this guy, Zach and I get to be buddies. And if at some point I go down in custody, he goes up. And eventually he gets out. About 6 months to a year after I get out of prison, we end up, it was just by a fluke, just a friend, somebody had bought a painting from me and was talking to his buddy, and Zach, it was his brother. And that guy had bought a painting from me, gone to his friend's house, and his friend was Zach's brother. And Zach's now wearing an ankle monitor at his house. And he's like, oh, this is my brother. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, you got it. He's like, oh, yeah, I just got out of, got out of prison. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, oh, I know a guy. I just bought a painting off of a guy that was locked up in Coleman. And he's like, really? He said, oh, yeah. He said, what's his name? He goes, Matt Cox. He's like, you know where Matt Cox is, right? And he's like, yeah. And I mean, we were only maybe 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away from each other.
Oh, really?
Got on the phone, called up right now, and he goes, do you know a guy named, Zach? And I was like, yeah. And Zach goes, hey, Matt, what's going on? So we start hanging out, which you're not supposed to do.
I was going to say that, but
yeah, of course. We hang out, and he 6 months later to a year, he ends up, basically shows up at my house one day and says, so listen, you're going to be upset. And I'm like, what? He's like, I'm probably going back to jail. And I'm like, what? And
you're like, don't tell me too much. No.
Yeah. Oh no, I've had that conversation.
Yeah, okay.
Where I've been like, we've started to have conversations. Listen, I want to know anything about nothing. I don't want to know nothing. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want this. So anyway, he ends up getting his probation. I don't think it was violated. The guy, I know it was violated, but he ends up getting arrested for a state charge. The state was looking into it. It was a PPP. No, it wasn't PPP. It was these guys were getting these the government. The COVID checks.
Oh,
and so they were
okay.
making COVID checks, and somebody gave him like 2 or 3 to deposit. They cleared. He kept 1 and then gave the guy the money.
Okay.
And then didn't think it was going to catch up to him for some reason. Like, you don't think this is going to catch up to you? So like 2 years later, it catches up to him.
Oh, was it a lot? That sounds like a low-level fraud.
It is a low-level fraud, but it's counterfeit. He's on federal probation for fraud.
Right.
This guy went off the chart. Criminal history chart long time ago. Like, he's not at like a 3. He's been starting at 7 every time he's gone.
Okay.
It's over. So I mean, he's been getting locked up since he was 25 years old. And listen, you want to talk about tragedy? Like, his whole life, he's done everything right. College degree, everything. Never broke a law, nothing. Till he got to be like 24. I think it was 24 years old.
That's really bizarre.
Yeah, never been in trouble. And if you talk to him, very articulate, funny, smart, very charismatic. And tell me about this little criminal, talking about criminal justice. Then I think he's 24 years old. He and his wife were just finishing college. They had a little boy. Mm-hmm. And he's at work one day and he gets a phone call. Well, he didn't get a phone call. His boss calls him in and says, hey, can you come in here for a second? He's like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, did you drive today? And he goes, yeah, I drove my car. Why? He said, okay. He said, well, we're gonna have somebody drive you to the police station. And he's like, why? And he said, so I just got a phone call from the sheriff's department. Your whatever his wife's name was, Jennifer, whatever she was in a head-on accident, and it killed her and your son.
Oh,
And you have to go downtown and you have to ID the body.
no.
They take him downtown. Cops meet him. He IDs the body. It's like, it's them.
Oh my God.
Takes the next 4 or 5 days or a week to put together a funeral. And then he's like, and I was like, and what happened? He's like, he's like, I couldn't go back to work. Like he can, even when you talk to him, he can't explain it. I couldn't do it. And so eventually he gets he's behind on the rent.
Mm-hmm.
They shut off the electric.
Right.
Then he finally goes back to work, and they were doing the credit cards, right? The AT&T Universal credit cards is what they were doing.
Okay.
Because he works for a phone center, and they're just calling up. This is AT&T. They were offering these credit cards. You call up and say, hey, would you like the AT&T credit cards?
Okay.
He goes back to work finally, and he talks to a guy for 10 or 15 minutes. The guy got like a $30,000 credit card. And just as he's about to agree to take the card and everything, the guy suddenly, his wife says something in the background, and he says, what? And they have a little conversation. He's, yeah, I'm not interested. And he hangs up the phone. And Zach's like, fuck. Like, and he's like, the guy dragged it out for whatever, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He's like, this guy just had $30,000 credit card for free.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even want it.
Mm-hmm.
Cost him nothing.
Okay.
And he's like, and I'm going to be out of my house in a week.
Can use this $30,000 credit card?
So he changes the address to where it's delivered.
Yep.
It gets shot to his house. He takes it. He pays off everything. Able to go home and see his family.
Mm-hmm.
Able to just everything. And so he just, at that point, he starts committing fraud.
Right.
He starts committing fraud, and he's never stopped.
He started by opportunity, though, and out of utility.
Yes.
So there are certain career offenders who start really young, and it's not necessarily utility.
Right.
So it's interesting that he started at that age. But how long?
Right, because it's usually incremental, right? Like it's from little things over time.
Yeah, but usually younger.
Yes.
For sure.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and when I was locked up and we used to talk, you tell your stories. And I knew him. I'd been hanging out with him for like a year or so in prison. And I had always asked him, because he had always said, no. The first time I got in trouble, and he'd tell the story when he got in trouble, he did this. Never talked about. One day, by happenstance, he mentions his son. And I was like, no, your son, you have a daughter. I thought you have a son too? He's like, well, no, I had a son.
All right.
Tells me the story. And I'm like, so you don't think that had any impact on you at all? Because I'd asked him many, many times, why did you ever start committing fraud?
Right.
I don't know. I was broke. I needed money. And I was like, you don't think? And he's like, no. He's just completely, no, of course, no, it had nothing to do with that. And then the next day he came back and walked up to me and looked at me in the face. He said, bro, I've been thinking about it all night.
Yeah, of course.
He's like, I never put that together. I've never thought about
Really?
that. Really. And he was like, just, how guys are. They shut themselves down. He never talked. I'd been hanging out with him for over a year.
Yeah.
I never even knew he had been married and had a child that died. He never brought it up.
So if his wife and child never died, he probably never would have entered any type of criminal world. There's a theory in criminology. We call that, there's a lifetime social bonds, things about that. So life course offending. And it's like people don't commit crimes because they have these really strong bonds.
Right.
So like he has a wife, he has a family, he's invested in society. Once you lose all those bonds, crime does become not such an unlikely thing that'll happen. And couple that with the opportunity he had, the desperation he has, and it makes sense. It really does. So understanding the tremendous loss, it's surprising that he didn't put that together.
No, listen, once I said that, like he couldn't stop thinking about it. He was like,
yeah.
And he used to say, he was like, I'd done everything right my entire life.
Right.
He goes, and I'd struggled my entire life.
Right.
And he's like, the person that he was like living for is his wife and his son.
Yeah.
And his son's like, he's like 18 months old, and they're just gone. He's like, and I remember thinking like, I'm done playing by the rules. I'm done. Struggle with going through college,
Right.
Working 2 jobs while going to full time, like his wife, juggling a baby, juggling who's driving the good car in the back. Like he was always, so yeah, he thought about that.
It didn't matter anymore.
It was over. I'm done with it. But yeah, so he,
So is he back now? Is he in jail?
He went back to jail for like a year, got out.
Okay.
6 months, got out. I helped him, of course. I mean, I help him do, I help you with this, get you a phone, get you this, whatever you need. I send him money now. He's in jail. I send him money every time he calls. Can you send me 150?
Yeah.
Can you? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I do that, and then he had been out maybe 6 months. You think was it 6 months or a year? He got out recently. That when he just got arrested.
He was out for probably a year.
A year. So he got out for a year. We helped set him up with a YouTube channel.
Yeah, because in between the arrest,
Wow.
so before his first arrest, he had came on the show. We had just started the podcast, and he had became like a favorite. Like, oh, like, these
People
guys
love
have
him.
good rapport.
Love him.
They have great stories back together. Then he goes away for a year, comes back, and everyone's like, yeah, he's
him.
back.
So you set him up with his own show?
Of course. Got to monetize in 30. Or do you do YouTube? Or
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
just, I don't know if it was just Spotify, but so within 30 days, he's monetized. 30 days.
30 days?
Yeah.
Took us like 2 years.
Yeah. I'm saying that's how his watch time, when we do a show, right? It's like 22%, 25% watch time on like if
There's a drop off.
right. Well, I'm saying if it's a 2-hour video, we got our watch time's like 30 minutes,
Okay.
roughly 25%.
Right.
Okay. So when Zach comes on, it's 55%, 42%, 47%.
Oh, so he's a fan favorite.
He's so jovial and happy and energetic, and fun. And anyway, yeah, we get him started. Everything's going great, and then I get a panicked phone call from his daughter.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they just arrested my dad. And I'm like, no.
So he's a guy that's deterrence doesn't work for him. So we talk about deterrence and
Yeah.
like sometimes deterrence works, a lot of times it doesn't, but getting caught, getting punished, that doesn't deter him.
Right.
Okay.
No.
That's interesting. He still has a daughter, too. So he still has like a bond there.
18. She's 18. She's just graduated high school. She's now going to college. Yeah. And I think that I don't know. He's just, and what's funny about it too is if I broke down like how his crimes worked and how he got caught, the way he would set up the crime and everything, you would go, brilliant.
Yeah.
Like brilliant.
Yeah.
And then you'd say, and here's how he got caught. And you'd be like, what an idiot. Like, are you serious? Like Matt running he's making several $100,000s a month. He's been doing it for years. Nobody can see him. And then you and your wife go and you go on vacation and you rent a hotel room for 5 days and use a stolen credit card. You've got $400,000 in your own bank account right now.
Oh, that reminds me of Robert Durst. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
He got caught. He had all this money. He's on the run. He gets caught because he stole like a $6 or $7 sandwich. But he had $40,000 in his car. It was like,
people are such. There's obviously this. It's mental problems. It's the guy that's driving around with he's got an expired tag and he's got a body in the trunk.
yeah,
And it's like,
Yeah.
But it's those.
yeah,
The guy I talked to yesterday. I had lunch with him. We were talking about that. We were talking about just behavior in general. We were talking about one of the things was like it's funny, the Jordan Peterson thing where it's like make your bed in the morning,
Yes.
clean your room up, clean that and people think, what does that mean? No, it means everything. It means everything.
yeah.
And he was saying in law enforcement, it's don't worry about the felonies, worry about the misdemeanors. If you find the misdemeanors, they'll lead to the felonies. Like the guy that's driving that car that has a broken taillight
Right.
for 4 months,
Yeah.
and he's also transporting drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if he's got drugs. He's got a broken taillight. Get the broken taillight, you walk up, he seems nervous. Let me search the car.
Yep.
It's those little tiny misdemeanors, stupid things that they do that arguing with the cops when you've got a dime bag full, you've got a bag full of rocks in your pocket and you're inviting it, and then they get around. This is like, what are you doing? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, what did you? But it was the arguing with the police officer. Miss me, I'm going to put you in cuffs. Now I got to search you. Now you're done.
Yeah.
You knew this.
Yeah,
You knew this.
you definitely knew it. Yeah, well, we call it too, like in criminology, we call it everyone has free will and makes rational choices or can make rational choices.
Right.
We call it bounded rationality. The decisions that certain offenders make are, you can't understand because it's not a perfectly rational person.
Right.
And everyone comes with their own set of rationales
Yeah.
and
If they were rational, they would be working a regular job. They would do. They would have
putting
done
that. Yeah, they would have done something a little bit different if they were rational.
Right.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about your friend. I mean,
No, but I know why I said probation. I never got to the probation part. Here's the thing. Okay. He came on the program and we were doing we did a thing, and he kept saying, because we had him and another guy and we were reviewing a fraud videos about fraud. Like where'd they go wrong? What do you think? And we're arguing, and I'm like, no, this is exactly what's going. He's like, no, I think this is. I'm like, what do you we're arguing. It ends up, it's easy content. It ends up being 2 hours and it gets 100,000 views because people like all of the banter.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, but prior around the time when we were off camera, we were like, man, you're off probation. He's like, I haven't gotten the letter yet. And we're like, the letter doesn't mean anything. And he's like, I know, but I want the letter.
Yeah.
And I'm going, yeah, but Zach, when my PO came and said, hey, by the way, on whatever the 12th, you'll be off probation.
Yeah.
I'm like, and you're going to send me the letter. And she's like, yeah, I mean, I'll get to the letter eventually.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, because everybody tells me the letter's important. She goes, the letter means nothing. You're off probation at the on the 12th. She goes, but I will mail you the letter. And I was like, okay. So and I'm trying to tell him that the letter didn't mean anything. He's like, I just want the letter. Now he knew in his mind, he knows he's doing stuff. He's doing
like,
dirt.
I'm not really off probation because.
No, he's thinking like I've been doing stuff and I'm nervous.
Course.
He knew things were happening, but I didn't know that. I'm like, it means nothing. Well, here's what happened was he never gets the letter. He gets arrested. So 2 months later, he gets arrested. He's never gotten his letter. And every time I talked to him on the phone, he was like, man, I still haven't got my letter. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not realizing. And so what had happened was the detective in the fraud case goes to his PO and shows them a picture and says, do you know who this guy is? And that the PO says, that's Isaac Allen. Mm-hmm. He's locked up for fraud. Mm-hmm. He's violated before.
Right.
What do you got? He says, okay. And so he does a lineup. They note it, everything. Now that's how they get the warrant, and they arrest him. As a result, by the way, they've gotten most of those charges dropped because apparently your probation officer isn't allowed to identify you in a criminal proceeding or something. They're not allowed to participate, whatever that reason is. And so they've dropped a bunch of those charges. He's going to plead guilty to this one charge of fraud. They're giving him time served. I think that's coming up on the 18th. They're going to give him time served, and then he's going to the feds to be sentenced for his probation violation.
So, okay. And then they're going to extend his probation too, which is...
Starts all over.
You said he committed his first crime at 24. I don't want to reveal age, but how old is he now?
He's 2 years older than me. He's
in his 50s.
He's 58.
Oh, so I mean, yeah, he has not shown signs of slowing down. A lot of people age out of crime, but white collar offenders, in fairness, don't age out like the same way that kind of what we call like street offenders do, who do more violent crimes too. So that definitely,
yeah,
there's a longer shelf life probably, but still, that's a long run.
It is a long run. It is. You already know this. How long were you a probation officer?
Only about a little over 3 years.
That's probably enough. It's enough to see people with potential and just be extremely disappointed.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
like I look at him, and he's got so much potential. And
yes, yeah. I mean that's probably the shame of it, because a lot of the cases, and even in 3 years, I had over 120 cases. And I saw a lot of people who didn't have the potential or didn't have a chance, didn't have opportunities, didn't have that. So I imagine for you, it's a little bit more frustrating. Like,
yeah. Well, I mentioned this in the last podcast I did, where it's like and I hate to say this because this is such a stereotypical thing to say, and it's look, and there's plenty of guys that are born in the projects that work their way out of it and end up being middle class and whatever. But the truth is, you go to prison and you hear these guys' stories, and you start to realize like this, I do feel like if you're a white guy who was born middle class, you were given a lot of opportunities that you squandered, as opposed to the black guy that was born in the projects, who his mother's in and out of jail. He's got 3 brothers and sisters. They're on Section 8. They're receiving food stamps. She's never getting out of that situation. His father's in and out of jail, or he doesn't know him at all. His uncles and brothers are in and out of jail. The only successful people he knows are drug dealers.
Right.
And then what happens? He becomes 18 years old and he ends up doing what? Selling drugs. And it's like, yeah, oh, he's a horrible person. It's like, he had no role models,
No,
none.
no.
As opposed to like in my, me personally, upper middle class, went to college,
Yeah.
graduated,
Yeah.
starts committing, I had a mortgage company, but as soon as things went bad, starts committing fraud.
Right.
Like I don't have the luxury of being able to say, well, I didn't know any better.
Right.
Everybody was doing it.
Right. I mean,
So it's, like it's upsetting to see. So as a probation officer, I can imagine seeing these guys and knowing their situation and being like, fuck, this guy's got no chance at all. Like he's back in the same place.
Yeah.
Everybody he knows around him a lot of these guys can't even find any place to go because everybody in the household's got a felony.
no, it's true. And I wound up seeing a lot of offenders like that. Same thing in and out. And in my head too, I knew like there's nothing that is going to happen that's going to change their scenario because they are going to still have grown up with, unfortunately, not the right role models, not the right opportunity. They live in socially disorganized areas that are poor. So like the strikes are really against people. And I think it's like the anomaly when people are able to become super successful when they come out of such hard beginnings. So I will tell you this also as a probation officer, my most unfavorite cases were white collar offenders. Those were the cases I didn't like.
Okay.
Because I felt like all my guys that I would get, like who possessed firearms or assaults or other things, they were who they were. They just owned it. Yeah, I had a gun because look where I live or, because of X, Y, and Z. But the white collar offenders, I felt there was a lot of trying to sugarcoat it, hide behind family. There was just a lot. It was different. They didn't own it as much in my experience. And again, that was a short couple of years. But, I would look at them and go, God, I had some people committed like these super awful frauds and they had a lot of money. So I'm like, wow, it's the power of greed versus the other guys who like, they're just trying to like make a living here or.
Yeah, we get guys every once in a while. Like I love the guys that come on and just own up to everything.
Yeah.
But we get guys every once in a while, they come on and it'll be a 2-hour podcast and you're kind of waiting for them to say like, at this point, this is what I did, and I should. And a lot of times they don't. A lot of times you're talking to them, and you're like, and they're like, yeah. And then I was indicted, and you're like, well, wait a minute, why were you indicted? And then, well, because they said that this and this and that. But really, that was normal. And you're sitting there talking, and you're like, I was locked up a long time.
Yeah.
And I've talked to 1,000 people at least,
Yeah.
and heard hundreds of stories. And I'll be honest with you. There's maybe 1 or 2 guys that I thought you shouldn't be here for the length of. You're not innocent.
Yeah.
You're not innocent.
Yeah.
But I think you got a raw. You shouldn't have gotten 20 years or 10 years.
Yeah.
But I don't think. Listen, you should have got 3 for stupidity.
Yeah.
But maybe you didn't. The crime you're here for, you didn't really commit.
Yes.
But just you. The problem was you were so stupid because you put yourself in this situation and this and this and this, and now there's nothing you could have done, and then you could have pled guilty and gotten probation, but you didn't. You went to trial, and now you're doing 15 years.
Trial penalty. So yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So I mean, I hear you because we'll talk. I like the guys that will just say, yeah, and this happened, and I could have done this, I could have done that. But I didn't think anybody was gonna, they'll just say it.
I feel like maybe not in probation, but when I got out of probation, like as an academic doing criminology, I started writing books, visiting prisons, taking students in. So I got to know this group in New Jersey called the Lifers Group. You ever hear of them? It's kind of a famous group. Like they were the first to have people come into prisons and like meet with them and question them and ask them about their crimes directly.
Right.
So I would take students in, and these guys they're there for 30 years to life. They're all there for some form of murder, whether it be felony murder, which I think is actually an antiquated, silly rule, whereby you have to spend life in prison for a murder if it happened in the course of a different crime, even if you didn't pull the trigger.
Right.
These guys, a lot of them are caught in this felony murder loophole. But
the guy that goes in the bank kills somebody, and the guy in the car sitting in the getaway car is now doing 30 years.
But the crazy thing with that also is that some of the guys that I know that got caught in there, the actual trigger man turned and got much less time.
Oh yeah.
Which to me just it doesn't make any sense. But so many of them are so honest about their lives and their backgrounds, and it's all bad. Like I don't know any one of those guys who's like, I grew up in a really good home and I'm just an idiot. They don't blame it on the circumstance, but they're like, yeah, I grew up selling drugs because that's what we did. That's what my father did, my brother did. Like that's what our lives were. But like most of the guys I know, at least that are in there for a very long time, totally own their offenses. It doesn't make them monsters. It doesn't make them innocent, but it means they're people and they messed up and they're going to get out, hopefully, 30 years and do something.
I like what Tom Simon's, he's a retired FBI agent that says, and he always says this in his, when he would convince people when he'd interrogate them and get them to sign a confession. Yeah. One of his things that he always said was, listen, he's like, I know you didn't mean to do this. I know this. I know that. He's like, and nobody should ever be judged on the worst thing that they've done. He's like, it was a one-time thing. I get it. But you know what I'm saying? It's because nobody wants to be judged. Nobody wants to be judged the rest of their life on this one moment or this one thing that they did. So yeah, I whenever I do like keynote speeches and I'll talk at universities and stuff, you always by Zoom on the universities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're not paying. But the kids ask questions, the students ask questions. So, but I'm always so blatantly open and honest about everything. They're always just like everybody, the look on their faces are just, I think, because I'm just not justifying anything and this is the way it is and that's it. And,
you're telling your story, you're sharing it, but you're not justifying it. Right. You're open about it.
And the teachers and everything, they're always coming out like, wow, like we've had people on before, but they always like, they always sugarcoat it. They always try and put a twist on it. Like it was just a mistake. I mean, I didn't know it was blatant from the very beginning. Yeah. So you had to learn the sentencing guidelines. I think that's what we were about to talk about because I was going to ask something about that. And then I immediately thought about Zach.
Yeah, I had to learn the sentencing guidelines, and I didn't really get it because I thought traditional probation work was you supervise people. Right. And so when I got the interview, they were like, are you interested in pre-sentence or supervision? And I was like, supervision. And they were like, you know what, you're a pre-sentence officer. And I was like, oh okay. I didn't realize that.
They were short on them.
But that's true, actually. Yeah.
I thought they did, but I just assumed that they did both.
They do in certain districts. Okay. Ours didn't, but they do. So federal and states, everyone handles it differently. Some will split that right down the middle. For us, we were strictly divided, and this was 2003 when I started, Southern District of New York. So I was a pre-sentence officer, and I still thought it was kind of cool. Like you're investigating people who have been convicted of federal crimes and you're making a recommendation to the judge. What do you think is an appropriate sentence for these people? So I went, this is
at that point, that was the sentence, right? Well, that was before it was advisory, right?
Yeah. So that's what I didn't know either. And that's where I was like, this kind of sucks. The sentencing guidelines dictated the course of everything. And for people who don't know sentencing guidelines, it's basically like a chart. And you have a horizon, axis and a vertical one. I'm really bad at the opposites there. But on one side of the page, you have the offense you've committed, and that's given a score. Across the top, you have your criminal history category. You draw a line between two of those, and you have a sentencing range in months. So anything that we were even doing outside of that, I was like, I'm investigating. I'm meeting with their families. I'm looking into their education, child support payments, mental health. I'm like, why are we doing all this if we're just going to give them a range? And the explanation was that, you can go, they can go lower or higher in the range. And sometimes there are departures from the range in extraordinary circumstances. But it was like very perfunctory. It was just calculating a range. These people came down to, a chart and a range. And for me, that was, it was a little bit, I was disillusioned. And then also there was the mandatory minimum sentences. A lot of the cases that I got were drug offenses. And I thought, oh, well, that's good because you know what? There's a lot of drug kingpins, so we can help get, reduce some of these kingpins and we're going to be, doing this work. I never saw a kingpin. I saw a lot of people who were poor and running drugs. That's what I saw. And with that one act, most of them who committed an act, were going to get a mandatory 10 years. Nothing anyone could do about that. And so, after a couple of years, I was like, gosh, do I really want to do this for 25 years? You know, people were burnt out. I'm going, I don't know. This system kind of sucks. Like, this isn't right.
Isn't it, and then when you come up with that, then you come up with a number,
Yeah.
and then the defense attorneys argue,
Yes.
and then the
Yeah.
court argue, or the U.S. Attorney's Office argue. So then now you're in between that whole argument of that you gave him an enhancement.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't qualify
Yeah.
because of this, and then, so now you're arguing this, and then there's absolutely, in fact, he also deserves this enhancement. Like that's got to be even more of a prolonged part of it.
So that's an interesting point you bring up too, because even though there's guidelines, there's discretion in those guidelines. There's, with the prosecution is going to lean towards the heaviest, or get those numbers up, and the defense is going to say no. You've assigned this wrong. This is the wrong enhancement. There was no bodily injury. I mean, for example, like discretion. If you looked at the guidelines for robbery, you'll see there are enhancements. So you add levels on. There's bodily harm, serious bodily harm, critical, and it keeps going up 2, 4, 6, 8 levels. You might think hey, someone got punched in the ribs. That's nothing.
Yeah.
And I might go, well, they couldn't breathe or they lost, I think it's serious. So there's discrepancies about where you want to wind up. And, this is most relevant now because of the Diddy case. And this has come up in this case specifically, what the prosecution hopes for, what the defense is going for, and how far off they are in those recommendations.
Well, I was going to say, and that's a great segue, except I want to make this about me.
Okay. Yeah.
So my base level offense was for bank fraud. So was it 8 or 12? I forget. I think it was like a 12 for bank fraud.
Oh, well, that's low.
Mm-hmm.
What was your criminal history category?
I think it was 2 because I was on federal probation when I caught the new case. So I think it was criminal history 2.
Okay.
And so and it was a loss of $6 million.
Oh, well, that's where all your.
So
what did the base level go to after that?
So it wasn't that bad.
Oh, okay.
I should have gotten was it like I was still at like 6 or 8 years.
Okay.
I got nearly 20 years of enhancements.
For what kind of things?
Changing jurisdiction to evade detection, sophisticated means, using a specialty device in furtherance of your crime, which was a computer.
That's a specialty device.
That's what they had.
Yeah.
Borrowing more than $1 million from one financial institution.
Okay.
Over 50 victims.
Right.
Which they manufactured some of the victims. So listen to this. This killed me. Yeah, I love this. When they were coming up with the victims, I was like, I don't understand. I said, you have Countrywide loans, you have Countrywide Bank, you have Countrywide home loans, and you have Countrywide Financial.
Aren't they all the same?
I said
one?
they're all owned by Countrywide, and they said no. These are all individual corporations, and each corporation is a different individual, and you borrowed from them. And I was like, and I look at my lawyer, and she's like, yeah. That's how it works. And I was like, okay, but then wait. Then I said, okay, that's fine. I said, but you have me borrowing over $1 million from one financial institution. And they go, right. I said, you have Countrywide. I said, Countrywide home loans, I owe $250,000 from. Countrywide Bank, I owe $600,000. Countrywide Financial, I owe, and I said, you're adding them up to get me to over $1 million.
Yeah.
And I look at my attorney, and she goes, they can do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you can't do both. You're counting them one as individuals, and then you're combining them. I said, that's like double jeopardy. And she's like, they're like, no, Matt, that's not how it works. And then the other one was, so I said, and she was going to argue that one. Don't worry, I'm going to argue that in front of, okay. And then the other one was, I was surveying, don't judge me, okay. I was surveying homeless people to get their information so I could then go get driver's licenses, passports, open up bank accounts, buy houses. Because they're somebody that isn't using their information.
Right.
Like my fear was I would put an ad in the newspaper to take applications for homes. And I then do the same thing. My problem with that was, what if this guy gets a DUI 2 states over?
Right.
And I get pulled over and I don't know it.
Yeah.
So and I don't want these people looking into their credit. Mm-hmm. So with the homeless people, they weren't using it. I give them $20 to take a survey. So I had a survey I made up, a federal statistical survey, 2705.
Federal statistical
Yeah,
survey.
it looked very official. It had a little logo and everything.
I mean, that sounds.
It did. It was great.
Sounds great.
FBI asked me where I got it, and I was like, "No, I made that."
I used a specialty device, a computer.
Yeah. And I had a badge that said statistical surveyor, and it had a picture, which was my mugshot. So I would go around and I would take surveys from homeless. I go, "Hey, by the way, here's where it fell apart." I said, "Hey, I'm taking surveys," and they said, "For what?" And I said, "Well, we're basically what I said was, I'm a surveyor who's taking surveys for the Salvation Army to determine where we place our next homeless facility." They say, "Oh, not interested." I go, "It pays $20 cash right now. It's 17 questions, take 5 minutes."
Okay.
You got $20 right now. You cash. You're gonna right now. Show them the cash.
Yeah.
Put it back. They go, "Yeah. What do you need?"
Yeah.
Take their information. Go home. Order their birth certificate. Social security card. Everything. And then I go get a driver's license, their name, passport, whatever. So I got an enhancement for using a charitable institution in furtherance of my crime.
Salvation Army.
Right. Here's the thing. They give an example to help clarify. If that's not clear, then they in the sentencing guideline, they give you an example of what do we mean by this.
Right.
Here was the example. Someone's going door to door knocking and saying that they work for the American Cancer Society, and they're asking you to donate to the Cancer Society. So that was my lawyer, and I was like, "That's not. I didn't borrow. I gave these guys money. I didn't take any money." And I'm like, and first of all, these guys didn't care that I said Salvation Army. I could have said ABC Lounge. I could have said anything, and they would have given me the money. It had nothing to do with that. I just threw it in there. I could have said anything. Like, there's no way that you can prove that contributed to that. So I'm gonna argue that. So
I'm guessing she lost all these arguments.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean,
I know
you got a long sentence and like it.
I got 26 years. So I never occurred to me, like, she was so confident. And here's the thing. Look, in her defense, she's a good lawyer. She's a nice person. She did everything she could do for me. And I didn't it's not like I gave her, it's not like she had a chance. But you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm 100% guilty. But yeah, but every time she lost, it would go up 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So, and you start adding it up, you're like, oh my God, because I should have gotten, what did I say, 6 or 8 years. I think I was supposed to get, like, I think it was actually the reasonable part of the sentence. It was probably, I think it was supposed to be like 10 or 12 years. Okay. Because if she had won the argument she made, I was supposed to get 12 years. And
then you would have been out in 10.
Yes, but she didn't win any of them. And I mean, you know what the judge said when he sat there and when she explained the whole thing? The judge goes about the Salvation Army one. The judge went, "Yeah, but I feel he sullied their reputation."
Wow.
Sullied their, like that. I have to do 4 more years because of that. The Salvation Army has a good reputation. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Okay, I don't know about their reputation, but I do know that probably tells you also the difference, like with judicial discretion. Like, you had another judge who would have been like, okay, well, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, in
4 years.
Another jurisdiction, it would have been. But yeah, it was like that. It was one after another that where they just hammered me. Where it was just it's like they were coming up with to get every single person that I had a survey or a name, they were adding $200 to them as a victim. I'm like, but that person isn't a victim. Like, this person, I just have a name on a thing. And they're like, no, he's a victim. I'm like, he's not a victim. I never used anything in it. I never had any idea. This is a name I put on a form. And I remember one of them was called David Freeman. And she's like, well, and I go, and David Freeman, who's David Freeman? She's like, yeah, you had this on this form. And I went, David Freeman. I said, I had never had an idea. I never stole his identity. And this is what she said. Literally, the Secret Service agent looked me in the face and said, somebody's named David Freeman. And I went, the fuck are we doing here? What are you doing? Like, what? And, my lawyer's like, come on, what are you doing? They argued it. We were trying to get them below 50 victims.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. Every time we would lose one, they'd come up with someone. Like, we're just going back and forth. Like, you're trying to get, their goal was to get over the 50 victims.
Is there a reason you felt like you were, not targeted, you were guilty of crime. So is there a reason you felt like they were dropping the hammer on you? Were you is it
because
like
it was
because you decided to go to trial, or because
So whenever people talk about this 2008 financial crisis,
right.
I was sentenced in 2007, and people were like, "Yeah, but it hadn't happened." No. In 2007, banks were going out. It's not till the bailout was in 2008.
Yes. Yep.
But for a year prior to that,
Yep.
there's every day there's a different bank, a different CEO is indicted or looking into or this crime or this one. So when I get in there, I'm the poster child of mortgage fraud.
Yep.
And and it looks bad. And the PO or the I'd also been on Dateline. I'd been like, there were all these articles out there, and I was on these TV shows that had done so. The publicity,
yeah. No, that explains it. It makes more sense to me. I mean, it still doesn't make sense. Like, it seems like, and I also saw this a lot. In fairness, I knew a lot of good prosecutors. I knew a lot of good defenders, but in my own research, in my world, my research focuses on the coercive nature of plea bargaining and bail. And I just think prosecutors have entirely too much power. And I've seen them with a lot of overreach and overcharging and what you're describing. I just, there's the fairness. So it's not fair. It's so disproportionate. Right. I do think prosecutors just have too much power in that regard. And that's why people have to plea bargain, because if you don't, as you described too, you had a friend who you exercise your right to go to trial, you're punished so much more harshly. They call it the trial penalty because you took your right, your Sixth Amendment right to go to a trial. Also, another thing that's awful about the sentencing guidelines, the judge can ultimately sentence you as well for conduct you haven't pled guilty to or found guilty of.
Yeah.
And so that became a point of contention with the guidelines, especially in 2005 when they had Booker v. United States. That was the case. That was the case that made the guidelines advisory, no longer mandatory, because judges were using conduct that you hadn't been found guilty of, enhancing your sentence, and that violates your Sixth Amendment. And so, that was also, what do you mean?
So Richard Bailey was found guilty of running these rich widows. He would date them, and then he'd sell them a horse. But the horses, you bought the horse for $5,000, and they're racing horses. And then he'd have these rich widows invest $100,000 and then also pay him to take care of and train the horse. But he bought the horse for $5,000. It's not a thoroughbred. It's not going to win any races.
Right.
So, but they don't know that. They like him. He's a good-looking, charismatic guy, and well, one of the women in his case goes missing. Now, he says he doesn't know anything about it, but there's like a couple of career criminals are saying, "Oh, he approached us to kill her," and they're like, "Did you kill her?" He's like, "No, we didn't kill her, but we'll testify." And they never found the body. He says they don't know who killed her. There was never anything to him.
They don't know if she's actually dead if they haven't found the body.
She's got to be dead. Yeah,
you assume it, but
of course, his thing is the last time I saw her, she was getting on a cruise to go to Europe. Like, that was it. And that's true. He knew she was going. What they're saying, and they found her car like in the parking lot. What they're saying is he went there, grabbed her, and killed her. These two guys are saying,
did he drain her bank accounts? Is that what happened?
No. She'd invested in a couple horses, given him a couple $100,000, and they were saying that she was threatening to go to the police.
I see. Okay.
Now, nope, the police weren't contacted. That was just their. That's what the prosecution is saying.
Okay.
This is what we think's what happened. Okay. What really happened is I was dating this woman that disappeared. Now, other women are saying, "Hey, we think this guy's running kind of a scam."
He's a con artist.
He's a con artist.
Con artist and murder are very different.
Right, but so he gets sentenced. Turns out it's $160,000. I want to say it's $160,000 fraud. He's convicted it federally.
Okay.
Goes to be sentenced.
Right.
He's supposed to get like a year or two. Nothing.
Oh my God, I see where you're going.
He got life.
They
took the murder.
And they made it relevant conduct.
Relevant conduct. So he gets life, but then they goes back and he fights it. And the judge is like, "You're right. The appellate court said I cannot do that. It's too much. You're right. 30 years.
I don't know if he did it or not, and it doesn't matter. That's such an abuse of power, right. And I just can't, I'm so bothered by such a blatant abuse of power.
Yeah, I was in prison with him. Nicest guy. I mean, he didn't owe me any. He didn't take me for any money. But he, and I'm healthy as a horse. But he not one of his horses, but Bailey, very nice guy. He did get out. He died, like a year later.
How long did he serve?
30 years. Like
did?
he served like 26 years or something like that.
Really
yeah.
did.
He got on like compassionate release like a year and a half before. And he got
just in
by the
time
way,
to die.
He's like 90. He was like 80 or 90. You could look. If you look, he's like 80 or 90 years old when he died. He was super old.
Yeah, but I mean.
But he was prison old.
Yeah.
He was in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Prison old.
Preserved him.
Yeah.
He's walking around. Like you would see he'd walk every day. Hey, how you doing there?
I mean.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just saying that's a good example of it's like, that's insane.
I had a couple cases that really bothered me too. I mean, like really bothered me. I thought, I remember having, one of my last cases was this guy was convicted of what they call like a lifetime distribution scheme. He was a marijuana dealer and he would fly back and forth like east to west coast. No violence ever associated. No violence, no guns, nothing. He had a scam. I don't even remember how he did it, but he flew it. And I remember I had that case, and at the same time, I had a guy who murdered someone else. And he was like, I think he murdered a drug dealer. He robbed him. He tortured him, and he wound up cooperating. And they were recommending a sentence of like 8 to 10 years. But my guy was getting life, and I'm going like, how am I working in a system where you murder someone, you torture them, and we're talking about 8 or 10 years, and this guy's shipping marijuana? And listen, I don't think you should be shipping large quantities of maybe back and forth using planes illegally. I'm not saying what he did was okay, but I couldn't wrap my head around this. And I was like, I think I'm out. I think I'm done. Like, I think I'm out. You know, I think I'm going to find another way to be part of the criminal justice system and not be part of recommending sentences that I don't even believe in. So I leave. It's not I'm quitting. I leave. And my dad's like, what do you mean you're quitting? You're a federal officer. This is, for my dad also, he was a mechanic, and like he thought I had landed a job that was like the dream job. And I'm like,
25 years and you're on a fucking 80% pension or something.
Exactly. And my dad's like, how could you leave? I'm like, you don't get it. I just don't feel good about it. So I applied to John Jay College, where I went for my master's. Mm-hmm. I applied for the PhD program. It's the only school I applied to. And I'm on the cusp. I've never been one of those like, oh, my GREs or SATs always wound up, or those standardized tests, I wind up a little bit above average, but I'm not knocking it out of the park, And I apply anyway. I get denied. And I'm like, oh, man. I don't know why I thought, like I went there, I got my master's. That surely someone will let me in, you know? But no, they sponsor you. They pay for that. So they only let the top people in. It's like 2 weeks before the PhD program is about to start, and I'm still at work, but trying to figure out what am I going to do now. I get a phone call from the guy who runs the program at John Jay. They have a cohort of 12 people. The 12th person, there was a woman. She got pregnant and decided to drop the program. I was the next one on the list.
Nice.
So they're like, you're in. And I was like, oh God, who win by default? Great. Who cares? So I was in. Yeah, I started. I went there. I did my 4 years for my PhD. And I thought that was a much better fit for me because I'm researching about this system. I can write. I can critique the system. Maybe people read my research. Maybe they don't. I don't care. I just feel better about what I'm doing. And I want to teach. And so after that, I got a job as a professor with a new criminology program in New Jersey. And that's where my third career was. So I've been there for about, 15 years. And then I say 5 years ago, in 2019, we get letters. I get letters from offenders all the time. I think people also don't understand, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a criminologist. So I study crime, I research, I write about it. I do a lot of different things, but I'm not a lawyer.
Right.
But I get stories all the time. Can you help me? What can you do? Piles on my desk of letters. And there was a female inmate in Jersey who was looking to tell her story. Her name's Melanie McGuire. She's not your ordinary inmate. She was convicted in 2007. Now is it convicted 2007 of murdering her husband, dismembering his body, putting his body parts in the Chesapeake Bay in 3 suitcases. So she's known as the suitcase murderer. In our area, it was a pretty big, famous case.
Okay.
And she wants to tell her story. And I'm like, well, that sounds interesting, I'm like, well, how am I going to tell her story, though? I write. I'm a writer. I'm a researcher. And so at the time, my boyfriend says to me, you should do a podcast. And I'm
kind of like Serial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't know what podcasts are. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And he's like, you know how to get the story. You know how to interview her. If she wants to tell her story, I'll figure out the rest, because he had done like video production and all of that. So we wound up doing that. We wound up interviewing her. She's one of the most interesting people you'll interview. And we got like 50 hours with her. And we put out a podcast that was called Direct Appeal. And it is like a serial one. And it did pretty well. Like, surprisingly, we didn't know if anyone would listen or if it would be a total bust. Now, people fell very squarely on one side. They either think she's innocent and total wrongful conviction, or she is so guilty and, how could you tell her story? We hate you.
Yeah.
I got some of the funniest hate letters. My sorry, my sidekick, I don't want to say sidekick, but I'm trying to think.
Co-host.
Thank you. I'm like, why are the words not coming to me? Because we wouldn't hear. But my co-host, Amy, she takes reviews and letters more personally. I think they're very funny. I like constructive criticism, don't get me wrong, but I got like, Dear Dr. Dumb Bitch, where did you get your law degree? Or like things like that. And I'm
They get very creative, right?
I'm like, that's Dr. Dumb Bitch,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's not a law degree. Things like that. But what really happened after that was that people started writing a lot. They wanted us to look at different cases of females. There's this female case, because we talked about also a lot in the podcast about females and how they do in the courts and how they're treated differently. I teach women in crime. That's one of my core classes, that serial killers, a couple other like courses that people are really interested in. So we just kept getting these case suggestions, like, can you look into this case? Can you look into that? I'm like, I spent like 3 years on Melanie's case, so no, but I can do a different case every week. And that's
people don't
where,
realize the amount of research that is required.
No, it was
For a 4-hour podcast or a 2-hour podcast,
Right.
you're like, this is...
the writing, the research, it took forever. Plus, I had to figure out what I was doing.
Yeah.
But so that's how Women in Crime came about. So Women in Crime, we do a different female case every week. And so we'll do a victim or an offender. We tell the story, but then we break down at the ends, like the criminology, the psychology, and the criminal justice system. Why did this happen? Is it wrong? Is punishment fair? What would have worked better instead? And that's kind of how I evolved into this next career, podcasting. And I love doing Women in Crime. I think it's great.
Right. But are you still doing being a professor?
Yeah.
I don't say professoring.
I'm still professing.
Yes.
I profess. Yes.
Professing.
Yeah, I
That's what it
profess.
is.
I profess.
Yeah.
I am still doing
Teaching.
that. I still teach.
Okay. Because you said 15 years. I thought that made it sound like it might have ended.
I mean, sometimes I'd like it to, but I don't know. It's also, do you go full-time podcasting? Sometimes I really miss working in the field. I just wish I could do it in a different, more meaningful way.
Can't you put yourself out there as like like an investigator, but like you're a subcontractor or something, and then they come to you and say, hey, we'd like you to do this, and you take it or you don't take it.
I mean, I guess I could do that too. I still love the whole pretrial process. So I was really into bail reform, and the bail reform movement is kind of still in the middle of happening, in flux. So I don't know. So would I work at pretrial operations again? And then I love like policy work. So I'd love to work for the U.S. Sentencing Commission and make real policy recommendations.
Right.
Like, let's change something and make it better. Or am I just going to profess and podcast? I mean, I could do either.
Where are you getting the people that you...
Well, so it's
Is
usually...
it still just people sending in?
It's usually my co-host and I, we talk about a case. So I pick a case that interests me of a female, and I tell her the story.
But are you picking them from the media, or are you waiting for are people writing to you still?
Oh, yeah. Well, we have all different ways. Okay. So we have a case suggestion list that has over 1,000 suggestions on it now. A lot of people reach out to us through Instagram and other ways. I love taking cases. I've taken a number of them specifically where there's someone a woman who's missing, a woman who's been murdered, and her case isn't getting enough attention, and people are asking for help. Can you please tell her story? Please get it out there. I really try to prioritize those. But other people want to learn about, I find a lot of people who make suggestions, they want to learn why something happened. Or like, I've heard a podcast on, this case before. I've heard the story told, but no one's ever talking about the reasons why it happened. Like, what do we know? What does the science tell us? And, how did the criminal justice system fail or not address it, or things of that nature? So sometimes we tell stories that you haven't heard of, and sometimes we tell ones that everybody knows. I just covered Ruby Franke, and people want to know, well, how did she go from being an influencer to an abuser, or, things that...
This is the one where she stabbed her boyfriend? Is that her?
No, that was Jodi Arias.
Oh, okay.
Ruby Franke...
No, not Jodi Arias. No, there was an influencer I want to say it was in
Oh,
Miami.
Courtney Clenny.
Yeah.
Yes, we covered that case.
Oh, okay.
We covered that one. Yes, Ruby Franke was the one whose kids were, she had the 8 passengers, I think it was called, and they were always in these videos, and it come to find out she was like really severely abusing her children.
Right.
And I think people just go like, why did this happen? So we try to cover the things of the why.
She's the one who says fake it when she's like, fake being happy.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we cover a different case. And sometimes I like to geek out about cases. So I'll sometimes pick ones, like this week, our case that we released is Dalry Map, Map versus Ohio. So it's the Fourth Amendment case. Basically the one that says, you have to have a warrant to come into someone's house and search.
Right.
She was the one, they wanted to get in her house. They faked a warrant. They got in, they found pornography. She was taken to trial. So it's a Fourth Amendment case. So sometimes I pick cases like that, or Miranda. I just recently did the true story behind Miranda. So it depends. I get my cases from everywhere. I get inspired sometimes by the law, by an issue, or by someone who just needs help.
But it's all women.
It's always a woman as the offender or the victim. But obviously, and most of the times, there are men in these stories as well. Because look, a lot of times when women are murdered, it's at the hands of men.
Right.
And there could be multiple people involved, but there's usually a female who's at kind of the heart or the center of the story, whose case is kind of in the middle there.
Okay. All right. We're not thanking you or anything. That's not happening. No, we don't do any of that. So everybody looks at, I noticed that people like look at me, like as soon as I turn, they look at me like you're not going to thank me for stopping by. No, we don't do that.
No.
Okay. So
I don't think you need to.
This is a very selfish podcast. All right.
I love it.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, please go in the description. In the description box, we're going to leave all of Meghan's links. It's Women in Crime. It's Women in Crime. So click on, you can click on the link. It'll bring you right where you can subscribe and follow. Please consider joining our Patreon. It's $10 a month and it really does help Colby and I make these videos. Thank you very much. See ya.